how about Kash Patel, Charles? Because the left are not fans. It'd be hard pressed to find somebody more loyal to Donald Trump than Kash Patel, who really had a major hand in seeing through the Russia lies and calling them out and calling out the personalities who push the lies. And he does have relevant experience to become head of the FBI, but the left is pushing the claim by Bill Barr when Trump allegedly proposed him at the end of his first term, saying, over my dead body, I think it was over my dead body, would I allow Kash Patel to take over the FBI? And he was the head of the DOJ at the time. So what do you make of Kash Patel as FBI director?
All right, let me preface this. I am not a burn it down guy. I'm a conservative in a non-burn it down sense, a literal conservative, a small c conservative, I suppose. I don't want to burn things down. I think we need a lot of reform in Washington, but by and large, burning things down is a bad idea. You don't know why the fence is standing, and so on and so forth. Second, preface point, I have criticized a lot of Donald Trump's nominees, some of whom I hope go down. Matt Gaetz, who won't be the nominee anymore. RFK Jr. ought to be voted down. I think probably Tulsi Gabbard, although I don't know enough about it. And definitely the Department of Labor nominee, who is a disaster on policy. I don't have a problem with this nomination. You know why? Because I think we need to abolish the FBI. I've done 3 podcasts on this with Andy McCarthy, and I've slowly convinced him more each time. I've written a piece, Abolish the FBI, about this. I think from its founding, it has been a big problem. It doesn't fit properly into our constitutional system of government. And I think culturally, it is probably irredeemable. That is not to say every FBI agent is bad news, far from it. But it is just a disaster. And I can't think of an organization that needs a wrecking ball, if that's what Kash Patel turns out to be, more than that one. The encomia to the FBI that I've heard over the last 2 days, coupled with the pretense that it's some independent organization that exists in the ether, that is not responsible to the executive branch, are grotesque. Well, that professionalism, the lifelong bureaucrats in the FBI weren't like this. Good. I mean, you started off with J. Edgar Hoover, and the most recent disaster was James Comey. This is not an institution that is fit for purpose. This is, to extend or perhaps torture my Chesterton's fence analogy with which I started, this is a fence that is covered in spikes and mold and is half fallen down, and nobody knows what to do with it, and all the kids are trying to avoid it because they're worried of getting sick. It's a disaster. I'm fine with Kash Patel. Put him in there. Let him do what he wants.
This is the soundbite that must have reeled him in, Rich. SOT 11, Kash Patel on the Sean Ryan Show in September.
And the biggest problem the FBI has come out of its intel shops. I'd break that component out of it. I'd shut down the FBI Hoover building on day one and reopening the next day as a museum of the deep state. And I'd take the 7,000 employees that work in that building and send them across America to chase down criminals. Go be cops. You're cops. Go be cops. Go chase down murderers and drug dealers and violent offenders. What do you need 7,000 people there for? Same thing with DOJ. What are all these people doing here? Looking for their next government promotion, looking for their next fancy government title, looking for their parachute out of government. So while you're bringing in the right people, you also have to shrink government.
That's when Charlie's heart started to go a little flutter.
I love it. I love it. I do.
So I'm not a big canceller of historic figures, but I don't get how that building is still named after J. Edgar Hoover, who in many ways is a symbol of FBI abuses rather than someone to be held up. I mean, if you just take the wiretapping of Martin Luther King alone, right, and then the suicide package they sent to Martin Luther King showing everything they knew about his tomcatting around in the hopes that he killed himself. It's unbelievable that building's still named Hoover. So my point would just be, and this goes to a number of these cabinet picks, the lion's share of whom I think are great and I wholly endorse, is that even if you're going to wreck the place, even if you want a wrecking ball, the wrecker, to adopt that term, has to really know what he's doing and really be an effective manager and be politically shrewd. And you're not going to be able to wreck the FBI without getting congressional buy-in. And Donald Trump did run his campaign against these institutions, but not with any specific vision to what he was going to do. If he just reformed the FBI in a radical way, that would be like a top 5 accomplishment in his second term. But what is it? Obviously, Kash has some ideas there. But I tend to think he'll get confirmed, because I think anyone who is not totally crazy the way I fear RFK might be, or doesn't have ethical problems the way Matt Gaetz did, in the way that some of the reporting portrays, Pete Hegseth is going to get through.
Hegseth.
Sorry, I always mess it up.
I know. Hegseth. I hear that on the editors.
That's why I tend to say Pete. So I tend to think he'll get through. It's just with him and even Pam Bondi, has a lot of law enforcement experience, right? Her resume is pretty good, but doesn't have a lot of federal experience. They're going to be resisted at every turn. And do they know what they're doing enough to defeat those people? That would be my concern.
So do we have time for me to slightly disagree with Rich?
Yeah, go for it.
Well, I think that is exactly correct with the vast majority of the bureaucracies in DC. I certainly think it's true of the Department of Justice. I think it's probably true of the Department of Education. And if we wanted to go through labor, energy, commerce, transportation, they have so many moving parts, and there's a certain policy expertise that is necessary for a reformer. I'm just not sure that one needs more insight into the FBI than we heard Kash Patel give in that clip. To me, those are the 3 problems. One is the intelligence gathering part of it. I think I'm right in saying Andy McCarthy agrees with me on that. I don't want to put words in his mouth. Another is that it just does not spend enough time, as Patel puts it, being cops and enforcing federal law in a really obvious way. And the third is that by having all of those people in that building rather than spreading them out, you are creating this bureaucratic climate culture that leads to people wanting to get into politics, and their propinquity to Washington, D.C. and its institutions makes this a problem even more so. So I think that's enough. When I listen to the vast majority of the people who want to smash things up talk, I think you'll fail for exactly the reasons that Rich outlines. It really does matter to have knowledge if you're a reformer. But with that one, he's running essentially a very large police station. And I think that sending him in there would probably be refreshing.
I have a thought. Kash could do it for 2 years and see what he could get done. Or maybe this is the kind of job that wears people out. Maybe he won't do the full 10 that you're supposed to get. But then I do see as a potential number 2, like a backup option, if Kash wants out, or if Pam Bondi decides to, leave, because these are very stressful jobs. I see your governor, Charlie, Ron DeSantis, after he finishes his term as governor, as a great person who could step into either one of those roles, who is totally on board with Trump's agenda, especially on the FBI. I've talked to him about it myself, and would know how to get it done. Now, I like Kash. I hope he gets through. I'm just saying that, he's somebody who's in the wings, because he's going to be term limited from running again, and he could be of great help. What were you going to say, Rich?
But that's a great example of someone who has exactly suited to some sort of task like that. Because he's been in Washington, right? He was a congressman, but he's been in Florida and run administrative agencies and brought bureaucracies to heel and used them to implement his vision and his agenda. So you could slip him in there, and whatever it is you want to do, there's a strong chance he'd make it happen. The worry I have with some of these people who are less experienced is they'll show up in the building and they'll never really even know enough to know what's going on. That's right. My fear. And experience is not, experience can be a symptom of being overly complacent and too establishment and not creative or imaginative enough. Yes, but it can also be hugely important to getting the job done. And people accuse me of being, a overly romantic Reaganite. But the greatest example of this at the Department of Justice was Ed Meese, who, by the time he was working for Reagan in the California governor's office in the mid 60s, had more experience in legal affairs than Matt Gaetz will ever have. He was a prosecutor. I think he was teaching law. He was in private practice. And then he worked for Reagan. And what does he do? His whole task there is defeating the left's lawfare against Reagan in his agenda. Took a different form there, but it still existed, and bringing the bureaucracies to heel. Then he's in the White House for the first term. What does he do? He's the White House counselor, and it's all about bringing the democracy the bureaucracies to heel. Then he shows up as AG. And he transforms the place. Historic attorney general. And he wouldn't have been able to do it without the experience. And someone like DeSantis, the experience would be a key thing too.
There is an epidemic affecting 2 out of every 3 Americans: poor gut health. Processed foods, stress at work, fluoride in the water, and even toxins in the air you breathe can overwhelm your digestive system. You might expect to feel the bloating and the heartburn, but the sleepless nights, afternoon crashes, even mood swings, these are all signs your gut may need some attention. While most probiotics get torn apart in your stomach acid, the spore-based strains in Just Thrive probiotic are clinically proven to arrive in your gut 100% alive, creating a fortress of good bacteria that can support digestion, immune system, and mental clarity. Just Thrive probiotic is a non-GMO and gluten-free product, and you can choose between berry-flavored gummies or easy-to-swallow capsules. You can even open the capsule and mix the contents into your morning coffee or sprinkle it over your food. For over a decade, Just Thrive has been fighting to make Americans healthy again with science-backed solutions you can trust. To join the gut health revolution, visit justthrivehealth.com and save 20% site-wide with promo code Megyn. That's justthrivehealth.com, promo code Megyn. Thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.